Well, aloha. And this is an attempt to redo the video on dreams and dream interpretation because I gather that the sound on the original live wasn't very good. So I thought, well, we'll give it another go and see if we can make the sound a little bit better this time. So today's topic is the subject of dreams, how to interpret your dreams, why your dreams are useful, why it's worth bothering to interpret them, and also a little bit about how you can help yourself remember your dreams if it's something that you don't always remember. So let's start with why dreams are important. Well, there's a couple of different perspectives on this. And one of them is the Hawaiian perspective. And from a Hawaiian perspective, the dream is a message from the higher self. And I'm going to show you a little slide because it helps, I think, to explain what I'm talking about here. Ew. Well, I thought I was going to show you a little slide. Apparently, I'm not. Okay. So let's go over here and see what happens. Oh, there we go. There it is. Right. So let's go back one. There. Hurrah. Okay. So the Hawaiians had the concept of the three selves and the four bodies, and really I'm going to focus on the three selves for this purpose, not so much the four bodies. So the idea is that you have a higher self, and your higher self is your connection to source, your connection to the divine, whatever your word for that is. So the higher self is also a trustworthy, like a trustworthy guardian parental spirit. And the higher self has messages for us. The higher self will help us if we ask for it, but it won't interfere if we don't. And the higher self, you can see these little purple lines. The higher self has a direct line of communication with the unconscious mind. Now, the unconscious mind is the mind that really is it's about the zone of keeping you alive. So the unconscious mind breathes you. It's your autonomic system, if you like, your autonomic nervous system. The unconscious mind also looks after your memories and represents your memories when you need them representing. And it is in communication with the higher self. The unconscious mind is probably finished evolving when you were about 7. So some of the thought processes, wrong word really, thought process, but it's about as close as I can get. Some of the thought processes of the unconscious mind are not as logical as our conscious minds here would like. And the unconscious mind tends to think symbolically. So our dreams are symbolic. Now, the unconscious mind talks directly to the conscious mind, or if you like, the conscious mind talks directly to the unconscious mind, because the conscious mind is the director of the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is, in theory at least, driving the bus. But there's no direct link between the higher self and the conscious mind. All messages from the higher self come via the unconscious mind. And I guess from a neurological perspective, there's a really good reason for this. The unconscious mind processes so much more quickly than the conscious mind. The conscious mind processes in seconds. The unconscious mind processes in nanoseconds. So if the higher self wants a message to come through quickly, then the unconscious mind is the place to send it. So that's the model of the three selves and the four bodies. So back to the Hawaiian model of dreams. So from a Hawaiian perspective, your dreams are a message from the higher self that comes into the unconscious mind, highly symbolic, and the unconscious mind then sends it to the conscious mind to interpret. So in the Hawaiian tradition, dreams were a really important part of the healing process. Dreams were, what would happen is that you'd go to the kahuna with a problem, and the kahuna would tell you to go off and dream and come back when you'd had a dream and tell them what your dream was. So you'd go off, you'd have your dream, you'd come to the kahuna, and the kahuna would tell you what the dream, you'd tell the kahuna the dream, and he or she would help you interpret it so that you could get a real good understanding of what needed to happen, and so that healing could happen, or you could take the necessary actions that you needed to take, whatever it was that was the message of the dream. From a Jungian and Freudian perspective, the dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. So if you think of it from a Jungian, or particularly a Freudian perspective, if you take out the higher self, the dreams are a better way of improving this connection between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. They're a way of the unconscious mind getting messages to the conscious mind. So whichever way you look at it, dreams are a form of message. Now, sometimes dreams may be predictive, so that it's sort of like future foretelling, or they may be simply a message. There may be something that you want to get some clarity on, some clarification on. So it's important that we have a way of interpreting our dreams. And for most of us, going to the dream book to interpret your dreams isn't really what you want to be doing. Much easier if you have a nice, fast process so that you can interpret them, if you can interpret them as and when you want, without having to dig out the book and discover that serpents are about teeth or sex or whatever it happens to be. I forget exactly how it goes. So, what about if you don't remember your dreams? Now, most of us have dreams. There is a very, very rare condition where you don't remember your dreams, but most of us actually, we do have dreams. So it's about how do you remember them? And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. First is to ask yourself, do I have a limiting decision that in some way stops me from dreaming? So set an intention. Tell yourself before you go to sleep, I want to remember my dreams. You can even, if you believe there's a limiting decision, you can use one of the Huna release processes that I teach to let go of the limiting decision that it's not okay, or the limiting belief that it's not okay for you to remember your dreams. And the more you do this practice that I'm about to teach you, the more you will remember them anyway. So the first thing is, have a little notebook beside your bed, or it could be your iPhone or whatever, but some way of recording the main points in a dream. As I say, we all do, except for those who have this incredibly rare condition where they don't. We all dream. So if you wake up and you have even the smallest smidgen of a dream, it's just, oh, I had a sense of seeing Joe, who I haven't seen for 5 years, or I had a sense of a plum, or I had a sense of a baby, or something. Write it down. And the more you write it down, the more you'll start to remember, the more the memory will develop. And when you write it down, put even that tiny, tiny thing through this process that I'm going to teach you. Now, another thing about this process I'm going to teach you is that you can also use it on your waking experiences. Because certainly from a Huna perspective, your dreams and your waking experiences, your sleeping dreams and your waking experiences, there's no difference between them. So you can take a waking experience and interpret it in exactly the same way as you can interpret a sleep dream. Hi, Trina. So, how do you do it then? Well, let's look at the next slide. And I'll just click there. Oops, wrong place. There we go. So the thing to do is set up 3 columns. Set up a page with 3 columns. And the first column is the main points of the dream. Now, in the moment when you dream, you may not have it all set up like this. You may just grab your notebook or your iPhone or your Android or whatever and just dot down the main points of the dream. But you want to collect the main points of the dream. And in the example that I'm showing here, I've got a dream, and the main points of the dream is I was standing there and there was this plum hanging off a tree. And suddenly this fairy appeared. I don't know where this fairy came from, but this fairy was holding this teeny locked box. So those are the main points of my dream. And if you only had one thing, you remembered your friend Joe, who you hadn't seen for 5 years, your bullet point would be Joe, haven't seen her for 5 years. Or it would be a baby. And perhaps there would be a few points that you might remember about Joe or about the baby. Anyway, they would make up column 1. So then, when you're ready, most important thing is to get column 1 down. As I say, it could be just you get it down in the moment and then you make it into this nice graph chart later. So then column 2, for each element in column 1, each element in the main points of the dream, what does it mean to you? So, in the example I'm using, I saw a plum. What does a plum mean for me? A plum for me is the juiciness of life. So, in column 2, plum, juiciness of life, or juiciness. Fairy, because there was a fairy in the example that I'm giving you. So for me, a fairy, there's something, it's magic, it's magical. But there's also with fairies, because if you've ever read any good stories about fairies, you'll know this. You have to treat fairies with a bit of caution. So there's some meaning around treating with caution. And then there's this teeny tiny locked box. So what for me is the significance of a tiny locked box? Well, in this case, the fact that it's tiny doesn't have much significance. It's a fairy, so it would be a tiny box, but it's hidden secrets. That's what a locked box signifies for me. So now I have column 2. I've got the meaning of each point. Then decide what context do you want to interpret your dream in. Now, the interesting thing about this technique is that you can take the same dream, in this case the plum and the fairy and the teeny tiny locked box, and you can interpret it in any context you want. You could interpret it 6 times over, once in relationship, once in money, once in spiritual development, once in health and vitality, once in business and career, and once in family and friends. Yeah, so you could interpret it in as many different contexts as you want. Usually what we do is interpret it in one context, and that context could be life itself. But what I've chosen here for this example is to interpret the dream in the context of the career. So I take column 2, juiciness, the juiciness of life, and I say to myself, in the context of my career, what does juiciness really mean? And for me, in the context of my career, it's financial and emotional satisfaction. Magical and treat with caution. Well, magical, that's all about trusting source, treating with caution. Beware of muggles, beware of the people who will criticize or try and pull me off the path. And then that third one, hidden secrets. In the context of career and business, what do hidden secrets mean? Deeper knowledge. So in my third column, I have financial and emotional satisfaction. I have trusting source, bewaring of muggles, and I have deeper knowledge. If I was to put all that together as a message, what would the message be? And here we come to this box that says overall meaning, because the overall meaning, if I take financial and emotional satisfaction, trusting source, bewaring of muggles, and deeper knowledge. Okay, so if I want financial and emotional satisfaction in my career, I need to trust source. I need to be aware of those people who would pull me off my path, who would criticize me, who would distract me. And I need to bring the deeper knowledge and exploration. Job done. So that is very simply how you connect with source. How you connect with the message of your dreams and how you can then interpret them. Really, really straightforward process. I think you'll agree. So I hope that's been useful for you. And if I could get this thing to work, but I can't. So oh well, okay. Well, we'll stay with dream interpretation then. I hope it's been useful for you. And please do comment if you've got any comments. I'd love to see it if you see the live at a slightly later stage. And if you want help interpreting your dreams, then get in touch. Book a consultation with me, secretartofhuna.com/diary. and I can help you walk you through the process, show you how to use the process in more detail. But it's such a useful process, and I really encourage you to play with it and use it. And I will talk to you very, very soon.